Welcome to this face feature tutorial where we're going to go through the different features that the face has, and I'm going to show you how I approach drawing them and what I'm looking for in the face features. So let's start. I have prepared here a set of base heads, as they call them. They are not really very realistic heads in the terms of curves and all this stuff, but they are more representative of the planes of a face. That's why they're more boxy. So I have them in different angles, so we can see a few different angles. That's the first set, and then this is a second set from bottom up and then profile. We're gonna start with looking at the nose, then we're gonna proceed to the eyes, then the lips, and finally also the ears. This is more like a tutorial where I'm going through kind of my process and give you some tips, but we're not going to deal with painting. Today, painting is a whole different area around the features and the face, and includes much more different things that we need to consider. So let's go with the nose. First, I have some steps here about the nose. And as you can see how I imagine the nose, you want to imagine it as a diamond shape first, then break it into more of a shape of simplified planes, then finally add on top things like roundness for the nostrils and the tip of the nose, which is very round, and finally in the fourth step you can remove all your structure and have a nose. So if we want to see this as a stepped approach, then I can just quickly get these 4 steps just for them to have them in mind, and then go over the base heads here and just paste them here, the steps, so we can have a look at them on the right side and see how we approach this in the different angles. So starting from this one, the important thing is for you to find out what is the center of the face, right, that we have here. So let me quickly draw a line on the center, and based on this line, what you want to do is try to imagine first of all how the nose is added as a diamond shape, right? So we start the diamond shape from quite high in the area of the eyes, which usually can be found also in the skull, which is the area of the holes where the eyeballs are landing. Then, depending on the thickness of the nose or the nose you want to design, then we have the diamond shape, as we said, right? So usually the nose also goes a little bit higher on the tip. This is what this is representing, and then we have the bottom plane of the nose. And we start with this one, effectively. So let me also lower a little bit the opacity also of the base heads, so we can have a better look what we are doing here. And when you have this diamond shape ready, you're ready to go to the next step. So I'm just gonna slightly delete this one, and then I'm gonna make sure I have the second step. So as you can see, the diamond shape is starting from here and ending here, but for the next step we wanna break this up into more planes. And basically we wanna find the keystone of the plane of the keystone of the face, and then go and add some more planes to this nose. So we add one more plane here where we make sure that this represents the upper plane of the nose, and then we have the other 2 planes. So what we actually did here is we divided this to 3 different planes instead of having just one diamond shape. 1, 2, 3 here. And then having that, we have the next step of the process where we will add on top our nostrils, and this is in this area here. These are the 2 nostrils, and then we have also the tip of the nose, right? So this is more going into anatomy on how the nose is being constructed. Finally, when we have all these structural lines, we can base our sketch above it, and then we just create some sketchy lines here, and then having all these guides. I'm just going through the different nostrils, for example, and then I'm just creating the sketch. So you can imagine this is a nose from the front, and let's do a little bit more clean sketch. So we have the nostril here, and we have the tip of the nose, the other nostril coming in. Then we have the bone of the nose, which in men it's a little bit more pronounced, and then it continues over and creates this shape here. Of course, the eyes are next to it, right here, and so on. We will see all the features next. So this is how we design the nose from the front. And then to do it in different angles, we're just doing the same thing effectively. We're just getting this line in the perspective now, in this moment of the 3/4 perspective. And then we just design a nose from the 3/4. So the central line now here is going to be shown like this instead of a straight line. And then it's just ending up here. And in order to create this diamond shape, then we'll just draw this plane, simplified plane, the upper plane, and then the other one. And the other plane, of course, we cannot see it, but we can imagine it's landing somewhere here. So it's gonna be something like that, right? Something like this, like a triangle being rotated like this. So from this central, let's say, shape, make it a little bit more clear for you. So from the central shape that we had before, we are rotating it to the right. That means this line moves to the left, right? And then this plane here becomes smaller, but this plane becomes bigger, right? And then we have this rotation. So similarly, then we just follow the steps to continue. Then we find the keystone here. Then we follow the same angles to create now the 3 planes. So the keystone again is also rotated. You see there are now 2 different planes here. Instead, if it was here on the left, it was just a trapezoid, right? Now it's a 3D form. And then we have this plane, and then we have this plane, and a little bit showing of this plane, right? So we have this 3D form, which represents now the nose. Then in the next step, we just lower the opacity on this one. We're just with the eraser creating less opaque lines, and then we do the nostrils. So we have one nostril here. We will have another one showing here, but a little bit behind this one, and then we have the central tip of the nose actually overlapping, right, mostly this left nostril, right? So that would be like this, and we will have this nostril overlapping the left nostril mostly. And when we have these 3 once, then we go and we start sketching our nose. Of course, we have this, and now even our shapes would be more rotated to the left, right? And then we have the nostril, which is going through, and now the nostril is a bit more pronounced, the hole where we, are using to breathe oxygen. And then we have also this nostril, which is not really pronounced at all. So if we make a more clean sketch, then we have this nostril, and this one, which is not really visible, and this line going up, and this is the final sketch, right? So we have a nose from this side. Now going back to this angle, similarly, we can see the same steps, how they are applied. Now we're looking the face from above. Now we design again our triangle. But this now, what line is actually being moved is this line here. So it's moving downwards. So instead of having this upwards, let's say, kind of angles, then we need to move this downwards. So we will see a triangle something like that, right? And this maybe would be much smaller or even invisible. In this case, probably there will be much smaller, because this one should come outside this line, which represents the start of the mouth area, and then this one should be inside, right? So they are not shown. After the triangle, we just follow the same process. We break up our planes based on the keystone. The keystone is a little bit bigger. Here you want to make sure that you also, when you're designing the planes, it's good that you have like starting a little bit more wider, and then you go inwards. So instead of creating just a very, very straight line like this, you just want to make sure you go inwards. As you know, we are coming from above in terms of a camera angle, then things as they go down, right, on the paper, they become a little bit smaller, like the head here. And then we design the next ones. Then we have this, then we have this, then we have a very small one, and then this. So if we remove all the stuff, then we have this one. So this tip of the nose now will be lower than the nostrils, right? They would be higher because of the angle we just said, like that, from the triangle. And then we will have also here this ones. So if we do a clean sketch, we won't be able to see any nostrils from the lower side, right, or any holes in the nostrils. We'll just have the tip of the nose a little bit like this. And this is how it's on the downwards angle. Then if we choose different angles here, for example, let me clear this up and then create a new one. Lower the opacity, remove what we did on the other ones. Similar to this angle, we will have the triangle starting again here, but here now the angle will be much more higher, right? We'll have something like this, and then create this kind of, let's say, diamond shape where these angles are much higher, pointing much higher, because we are looking the face from below. And if we erase a little bit this, then we break the planes. Again, we have the keystone, which is guiding us, and then we have the, quite opposite angles in this line. So instead of going like that here, like before, because we are looking from below, then we want to have them look going like this in terms of angles. Then we have this, right? And then we have this and this. So all these planes, what they are actually good for is for you to understand the 3D form and also be able to shade it afterwards, right? Then we have on top the anatomy. So we have the ball of the nose here, right? And we have the nostrils. And then based on that, we can start sketching. We can have this. And we have the nostrils. And of course here we have the area that is connecting to the mouth, and we can see the holes. So if we make a more clean sketch, then we will have this ones coming in, and then we have the area of the mouth, right? So we can see the holes here, and then we have the nostrils coming up, right? And this is the lower angle of the nose. And finally, this angle on the completely side view. Then we have the diamond shape coming in like that, right? Like this. Something like that. Depends on the, like people have different noses. You can have like noses like this. You can have very small noses if it's more of a feminine nose or something like this. And then, since this is kind of a 3D form, everything is more like this, right? Then if we lower the opacity, then we just break in the different planes. The keystone would be very, very, very thin here, and we'll have one plane going like that, which we don't see, but we only see basically the side plane now. And then we have the other plane going like that, which we don't see, and then basically the side planes. Similarly now, then what we do is we do our 3 bolts for the tip of the nose, and then we have the other one, and then the other nostril, we cannot see it because it's in the other side. We only see this nose in this view, and then if we lower the opacity, Then we can start designing our noses, right? And then we have this, and then this area depends on how much you want to expose this nose bone here. You can have it like that. And this is the side of the nose. Okay, so how do we apply this in some portraits in references, for example? So if we do a similar thing here, then lower a little bit the opacity on this and this. So we have differences between men and women. But before we apply this, I'm going to show you a little bit more about the anatomy so we can understand also what's going on. So we saw before the planes, right, of the nose. So this was starting with a diamond shape, then we had these planes, and you can also even break it into more of complex planes. But how these planes here get created, like how do we go from here to here, right? What are all these planes and why are they being broken down like that? This is based on the anatomy of the nose, right? The anatomy of the nose says that we have three major areas in the nose. We have the keystone, which is more of a part of the interconnecting with the cranium, but then we have the nasal bone, then we have the upper cartilage, and then the lower cartilage. The names are not that important. What's important is for you to understand is that we have three different bones that create this kind of angles here for the nose, and then we in that way they also create the different tips here in the nose tip, where you can see this kind of ball we have, right? Then based on this anatomy we can see the differences between men and women on how the nose differs, right? So if we're going to apply, as you can see, for men is much more prominent, this cartilage and this upper cartilage and this bone here, but for women especially it's more like that, right? It's more like this. So if we want to make sure that we draw our references based on what we see, we want to create a breakdown similar to this, where we go over the reference and we try to find the different planes as I have on the left, right? And then we have these lines, which are more like a flow lines between the ear, and then you have this, and then you have this. I'm just showing you quickly. This is more on drawing faces, and you can see this process in my other video about drawing faces, but quickly doing this one, and then we can want to find the central line so we can see what's happening. It's good not to over curve this line, but effectively we have this, and now based on that we have created, right, we have this area going down. Based on that we have created and the structure, we want to apply our rules. So what we do is we start again with a diamond shape, where we start here and we follow the lines that we set, right? So this is the line of the angle of the nose, and when we reach the tip we want to bring it down where it ends. Then where the nostrils start to change, we want to draw the other line, and then here the other line. Of course it will end up somewhere in this area behind, but we don't really see it, but it's important just to draw the line. So then we have this kind of triangle. So if we repeat this process here, we have this kind of angle, like it may not be 100 correct, but it's just for purposes of showing you how is the process. Then we have this plane here, which is the bigger plane that we see, and then we have this angle, and then we have this angle, and we have this smaller triangle on the left, right? And then if we start bring our lines back, the next step was of course to find the keystone, which is this one, right? And since this is a 3/4 view, then we have this one, right? And then we have this plane, which is the front plane of the nose, and then we have this plane, which is the side planes here, and then we find this planes, and this ones. So similar here, right, we have this keystone, which is following the steps, the side plane, this plane of the nose, right, then we have this kind of side plane, then we have a little bit of side plane from the other side, and then we have this, I think maybe this is a little bit like that. Okay. Then the next step, as we said, what is the next step? We're gonna go through the circles, and then we have the tip of the nose, right? If we just maybe lower a little bit more, then we have the ball of the tip of the nose and the nostril, and then somehow a little bit the nostril here, but it's not really shown. So if we do this here, we have the ball of the nose and the nostril, and maybe we have a little bit of this one here. And then a little bit more on the anatomy now. We have for him, as you can see, a very, very pronounced bone here. We're gonna make sure we capture this bone, and then we have this angle here, and then we have this angle here. So if I'm gonna try to now draw this, then I have this, right? It's almost touching. Here it's very, very small. Then I have something like that. So if I'm drawing a quick sketch of this nose, then I have this, and I have this, right? So this is kind of his nose in a sense, and how we design it. Maybe since there is a harder shadow here, maybe we wanna give some small indication on this, right? That this is the shadow and so on. Alright, so this is one of the noses. For the more feminine faces, similar process. We start by designing the structure of the face, right? What we have here. Again, you can see that in my other video where I draw faces based on shapes or based on the Loomis method. There are two different videos on that. Then we have the structure of the faces. Then we have this one. So we want to make sure we find the keystone. Right, here the angles are a bit wider in the females, and we start by creating, the diamond shape for the nose. Right here on the angles, this is where the nose is turning. As you can see, much wider, but smaller in general. Right, like kind of more squashed like that. So we have this angle, and then we have much wider, somewhere like this, and somewhere like this, and then. So the structural lines don't have to be perfect, right? It's more like that, or maybe even like this, a little bit more. Then we go to the next step, where we go and break this up to 3 different planes. So we have the keystone, then we have this, and we have this plane, and we have the front plane of your nose. Then we bring this down here at the edge of the nostril, and then we have the bottom planes, smaller here, ending and starting the mouth. So we have this. In order for you to do it much more concrete, you may want to measure even more, right? Like, how big is this plane? How big is this plane? Is it the sizes that I'm drawing? Are they, good enough? Like, if you want to draw lines next to it, for example, are they in the same positions, right? Okay, this is much lower, for example. Now, I didn't measure it correctly, of course, so maybe we want to make it higher. Let's see if it's here. Okay, it's here. And then we have the planes, as we said. Probably all the stuff will come higher. Right, this is where here mouth starts. And now we have these planes, and this probably it's even higher. So you want to make sure you kind of measuring correctly, right? Either on the widths or on the heights of the different landmarks you you're doing. That's why we're using construction to have these landmarks in order to help us make sure our measurements are better. And then on this we have the next step where we try to find out the ball of the nose, right? So should be somewhere here, maybe a little bit more like this. Maybe it's not really a ball, and this, as you can see, it's a little bit more like oval. So it's not always a ball, right? But it's a ball-like shape. So this is an oval, and like that. And then we are more on the shapes area here. So when you have this and then you have this angle, then what you can do is try to connect this here and then try to connect it with the lower plane. So we have all the data now to do a more concrete sketch for us, and then we are doing it like that. So if we go for the last sketch here like this, then we have this area showing here, right? And then here nostril here, and then here other nostril where it is like this. And as you can see, what I didn't do compared to the male nose is I didn't exaggerate this at all, right? I didn't draw it at all, because the whole idea between females and males is that males are having more exaggerated angles and lines on the different planes that they change, right? Like this one's here, compared to females where they don't have these exaggerated angles. Also this area, for example, here, see, it's much smaller, right? So the plane would be something like that, and so on. So this is the how you can apply this method and how you can have drawing the different noses. Let's go to the next one, which is eyes reference. Let's talk about eyes now. And similar to the other one, we're going to use this base heads to show you the steps. First of all, we have these steps for the eyes. So we have 3 steps here. Eyes may look more complicated, but essentially when you get the grasp of them, then they look much easier. What you need to know about the eyes is, first of all, we're talking about a ball, effectively. This is the base form we're starting from. And then on top, we're gonna put these eyelids, and then the iris, and then we're gonna talk about, in the third step, a little bit the forms around the eyes on the skull that create these forms over the eyelids. Let's then go through the steps. We'll just pick this one, and then we're gonna, similarly to the nose, we're gonna paste it next to our reference heads, and then we're gonna start looking at the different angles of the eyes. So first of all, we wanna make sure that we have the ball, starting with the ball here, just doing a circle, right? Usually you may hear some measurements that somehow the whole face is like 5 eyes across. This usually is only the front view. Things when they start going into perspective, 3/4 view, measurements change, but it's maybe a guide you wanna follow if you're doing more to realistic eyes. But if you wanna do stylized eyes which are bigger or anime eyes, then you have to change these proportions. Then what we do is we look at the eyelids. So we have the upper eyelid here that goes around the ball, right? It's just turning around, it's a whole thing around the ball, and then the lower eyelid, and then you have the eye drop here, similarly to this one. You're just going around the ball, you have the eyelid, and then depending on where the eye is looking, then you have the iris. And then what you want to do is on top is make sure you have some other forms, like the form that comes from the skull on top of the eyelid. Like if the upper eyelid is that, then you have this form on top. And then you have some forms a little bit more close to the nose. And then of course, depending on what you have in terms of eyebrows, you may want to use this kind of form to create an eyebrow, which is a trapezoid starting here and then going to the other, a little bit towards how the skull is turning. It's going like that, right? So you have the eyebrow here and like this. So if we want to make a little bit of a, let's say, cleaner sketch, then we have the eyebrow, then we have this overlapping form. Usually this is more pronounced in Caucasian people. If you are looking for more Asian faces, then this won't be there. Then you have the upper eyelid, then you have the lower eyelid, then you have the iris, and then you have the pupil inside, right? And then we do the same for the other side. Then we have the upper eyelid, lower eyelid, iris, then we have the eyebrow, and then we have the eyes like this. Then similarly for the 3/4, which is doing the same, we just have to have in mind that the ball on the left side that is not really visible is being covered by the nose, right here. And then we have the eyelids. Now the eyelids, like we have this upper part, instead of being more like this to this side, it's going to be pushed even more to the left side because we are turning the face towards here, right? So that means every mark is going to be turned. This eye drop is going to be a little bit here, it's going to be shown a little bit here. Then we have the other one, and of course things again we're going to move around at this side, right? Have the same angles, but of course the eye drop won't be shown because it's going to be back behind the nose. And then we have this after the balls, and then we have the iris here, and then finally also we have this forms. So if we kind of erase a little bit, make a more clear sketch, as we said, starting with the ball, then we have the eyelids, then we have this, then we have the eye drop, similar from the side, as the whole idea is that the eyelid is just wrapping around the ball here, so that's why we cannot see it. And we have these forms, and then we have the eyebrows covering the rest. They are turning like that. As the head turns here, they are turning also with the head. And then you have the iris, and then you have the pupil. Right, so this one is covered by the nose, as we said, but still the ball is gonna go behind the nose. So as long as you remember the ball, then you can always draw the eyelids, upper eyelid and lower eyelid, wrapping around the form of the ball, and makes it that way it makes it easier to draw the eyes. When we are looking from above, then we have again starting with the ball, but of course the ball here is gonna meet the upper part of the bone of the skull. That's why this line here that represents the kind of this bone is passing through the balls. So that means the upper side of the balls won't be visible, there would be an overlap. And then that means that the eyebrows effectively, which are kind of landing here on this bones in the skull, we're gonna be like that, right? And then they're gonna be covering part of the eyelid. And of course the eyelids are gonna have a much straighter, let's say, angle here compared to this angle, because as we go down, the angle turns from this more like this, and then this angle of the lower eyelid is going to be much more curved. So instead of something like that, it's going to be something like this as it curves around the ball. And then we do it also here, and we have the pupil, and then also we can do the tear drop here where the tears are coming from, right? So this is how we draw eyes from this angle. So if I just make it a little bit better in terms of lines, we have, as we said, the eyebrow coming in, right? Then we have the upper eyelid, then we have the lower eyelid, upper eyelid, lower eyelid meets here, right? So you may be able to see sometimes this form from the skull into the eyelid, but it may also be not shown, depends on the angle. Then we have the pupil, and then we have the eyes looking down, right? Now on the other two areas where we have the face looking up, we are looking down up to it, right? So we have similar, we start with the ball of the eye, both sides. Then we have the actual opposite from the other angle. The eyelids will just wrap around like this, the lower eyelid will wrap around like this, and the upper eyelid would have a bigger curve like that. And then we have the tear duct here, and then we're looking up, and then we have the eyebrow looking like this from the other upper side, and then like that. What we need to think here is the difference is going to be larger. So I made a mistake here, I made the balls a little bit higher. So what we want to do is make sure we move them a little bit more down, because they should be stopping somewhere here. There's no bone here because the whole of the whole skull is bigger, but effectively that means they are kind of overlapped by the cheeks in the face. So we're gonna have a little bit more of a distance between the eyebrow and the actual upper eyelid. So let's make sure we have this in mind when we draw the eyes. So we have the eyebrow like that. Then we have the other eyebrow like this, and then we have the upper eyelid, lower eyelid, lower eyelid. Similar here. You can see the curve is just curving around the ball. And then you can have also this kind of lines here which indicate the difference between this plane and this plane as the bone of the skull turns in, and then we have the turnout of the eyelid, right? So we can add these two lines to indicate this. So as you can see, the difference is much bigger here. This is more pronounced, this curved plane, right, where we have the bone of the skull as it goes into the eye, into the hole of the eye. And then that's how we kind of think when we're drawing eyes, when we're looking the faces from below. And on the profile view, we have again the eyeball, only one eye is being shown here. Let's make sure we have a little bit of distance because they are kind of placed behind, right, into the eye socket. Then we have the upper eyelid, so that usually should be around the middle, it should end, right, the upper eyelid, and then we have the lower eyelid, and here this is the visible part of the pupil. And of course we have again the eyebrow coming in, right, and turning around here. Usually this is where the nose starts, and so on. So this is the profile view. So we said eyebrow here, then we have the upper eyelid, then the lower eyelid, then the iris, and of course we have the nose. Okay, so this is how you think on the different sides. Effectively the key here is this ball shape where you can play around and put the eyelids into the correct place while you're drawing eyes. One little thing more is that depending on the case, right, you can have eyes that are kind of more downwards, like this, like this side is more downwards. Many times you're gonna see people doing this line where they calculate, for example, the whole angle of the eye, if it's upwards, if it's more like a cat eye, for example, where you have this upper lid ending further far away up here, this one, and then it creates this more of a cat eye. So the different shapes of the eyes, but effectively this helps you think in terms of perspective in 3D space. So having done that and having said that, we can have a look at the anatomy, which is going to help us also figure out some other tips. So one thing is that you can either draw the eyes by doing this kind of curve flow, right? Let me quickly, this kind of curve flow, but also you can think about them as planes. So that means you have 3 planes on the top, right, until you land into the other, let's say, shape, which is the bone above, pretty much. And then on the bottom you can think about having 2 planes like this, right? So you have 1, 2, 3 and 1, 2 on the bottom, and then the tear duct is not part of the ball, of course it's outside. That's the first thing you can think about of the eyes if you want to make the planes more complex and figure out also different angles based, for example, on a reference or something like that. Another thing you want to have a close look when you're drawing eyes in profile is that the angle of the profile eye is more like that. So the upper lid is a little bit in front of the lower lid, and that means it's just a little bit more outside and it's wrapping around like that compared to the lower lid, right? Usually this is how the eyes are looking from the profile. It's not the opposite, that the lower lid is in front of them. It's usually the upper lid because it's just a little bit more low. And what you need to know effectively is, if you can recognize the different parts of the eyes, it's a good idea to know them. Maybe not by names, it doesn't really matter, but as long as you have the idea of the different parts. So you have, as we said, the other eyelid, then we have the lower eyelid, then we have the iris, and then we have the pupil, and then we have the tear duct. And this is the basic things about the eyes you want to know. It doesn't make sense to go more deeply into the anatomy, because for us artists, we know these things, it's fine. The only thing I want to point out here is that if you're going for more realistic eyes, it's a good idea to know that the upper eyelids and the lower eyelids, they don't just have these 3 planes that I showed you in the other picture, or these 2 planes here, right, like we saw here, but each eyelid has thickness. That means they have a small plane coming right here, right? So they are not like that and then completely flat. They have this small thickness both on the upper side and the lower side. So that means the eyelid, if you're going and drawing something more realistic or semi-realistic, is a good idea to know this. So that means this, if you're having light, for example, coming from above, then this should be in the light and this should be in the darkness, right, while you're painting eyes. And the final thing about the pupil is eyes, when you shade them, and we're going to talk about it in future videos about how do we shade and paint eyes. If we again have a light coming from here, since the iris is a cone, then you need to shade them completely the opposite way than when you shade, for example, the eyelids or another ball, because eyes are a cone. So effectively this side here comes like this, right, and so on. And the pupil inside the eye is sitting in the eye, right? So while you're measuring, you don't want to put it here. Let's make it a bit more clear. You don't want to put it here. Let me see, is it this one? Yes. You don't want to draw the eye, the pupil, exactly on top of this line, right, because it has also a kind of a thickness, as we see here. Instead, you want to move it a little bit more to the left, so it appears that it's in the iris, right? So a little bit more to the left, as it's in here, because the surface of the iris is overlapping the pupil. So if we want to see it in application, for example, again, in these 2 portraits, right, we were talking about the noses. We had the noses. Let's have a look at the eyes. Again, we have the eye here on the left. So we have the ball, right, as we did before, we have the two balls. Be careful not to include the tear duct in the ball, right? Kind of a little bit like that. And then if we want to make sure we have the different angles of the eyes correct, we see we have one very small plane, then we have the second one here, and then we have the third one here. So if I want to make the same ball here, right, I'm making a ball, and then I'm having the small plane like this, and like this, and like this. So, and the other one on the bottom side is this and this, two planes, right? So this and this. And having this in mind, then I can just erase my lines and then go above and say, okay, he's looking downwards, right? I have this one, and then I have a little bit of tear duct here, and then he's looking downwards, right? That's how we apply the eyes. I usually also do kind of an indication here about the ending of the upper eyelid, and the indication that the bone is starting like this. And then you have also the eyebrow. Let's maybe just indicate it simply here, something like, I'm gonna do something like this, right? And this is what we have about the eyes. And here for hair, similarly, we have here eyeballs like this, going behind the nose, right, as we said, and the other eyeball. And then we have 1, 2, 3, and then 1 and 2. So if we do the same here, so we have 1, 2, 3, and then 1 and 2, maybe a little bit more like that. And then we have the tear duct, and then we have here pupil, here iris looking at us. I'm assuming somewhere here, but I don't know exactly. And then we have, as we can see here, the difference is that here upper eyelid is much smaller, and this area is, the bone is coming down, is much bigger. So I'm gonna push this down, right, somewhere like this. So I think I'm very high here. I'm gonna move the whole thing more down. I think that's better, a little bit. It has also a downwards angle. For example, I can measure the downwards angle. Yeah, this should come more down, right? And then maybe move everything a little bit more down again. So we have this, we're just doing measurements, and then we have the upper eyebrow like that, maybe a little bit more downwards, and this kind of rough sketch here. So let's do like this, something like that. I think it's more to the left, to the right. And then we have this. So of course you can go into details and start looking for the, let's say, details like the eyelashes here, for example, in the upper side, but this depends on the style, in my opinion, on how you draw them. This one is a little bit more like this. For example, how I would draw if I wanted to do eyelashes. Here I would just make something like that, starting like this and making triangles. Starting from below and then bring it down like that. Of course, they're not the same because I'm just doing you a demonstration here. Many changes need to happen to make it look like the reference, but this is how you think in terms of eyes, right? You want to make sure that you get your angles and start measuring. Don't put too much emphasis on the lower eyelids if it's females, because then it just creates more of a male-like eye. So this, you may want to make sure you have the right angle. You want to measure the angle of the eyelid, and maybe, for example, this distance, if you want to put it more correctly, this should be correct. And this kind of measurements you want to be doing when you're measuring for eyes that are based on a reference. But effectively, the whole idea is you put your ball here, you make sure you have your eyelids, and this is how I start drawing eyes. Then we're going to have a look at lips, and finally we're going to go through the ears. Before starting with the lips, I wanted to tell you that I'm going to have a link in the description of this video that is pointing into my Gumroad page, where you can download all these base faces here and heads together with some of the layers about the lips and the eyes or ears we're going to go through later, so that it can help you as a reference if you want for your own drawings. It's going to be absolutely free, no cost. Click the link and then go download these reference files. It's going to be a PSD file with different layers of reference for you. Yeah, so the only thing you need to go do is enter your email there and just download the file. Let's continue then with the lips. Let's see again my notes here. So the lips are a little bit more complicated in terms of the different angles. So let's start with the first note here. So as you can see, the steps for drawing lips in this angle, it's more about shapes, starting with the shapes on the left, which is a heart shape on the top and there's two circles, and then going over the shapes and finalizing the lips. So if we just copy the steps and try to apply them in the base heads, and let's see how they change in the different angles. So let's go here, let's make this smaller, somewhere there, and start applying this. So we have the shape. So based on the fact that this is the area of the mouth, right, I'm gonna do kind of a ball here indicating the mouth, something like that, right, where we indicate the mouth. And then what we have is, move it a little bit higher, and then what we have is this kind of heart shape for the lips, right, and depending on whether this is a male or a female, it would be larger or smaller. Then we have these two circles on the bottom side, and then the next step is we will erase a little bit this ones and then go over, and then this we're going to make a little bit darker, and here there would be kind of the two balls where the lip is going inside, right? So if we kind of make everything a little bit more subtle, we're just gonna make this is like that, and then we have the lower lip, and then we have this. So these are the lips. So usually for men the difference is that they are even much less thick, so they are just very, very thin, right, compared to females, and females are more like with thicker lips and so on. So that's on this side, and if we go back to my notes, then we have the next one where it's describing more what's happening on a three-quarter view, where you have the shapes, and then you continue with breaking the different planes to end up with the lips. So if we try to apply this now on the base heads, So we have this, what we did now. Then we start again with the ball of the mouth, right? So something like that. It's passing through this central line here. Then we do this line in the middle, and then we want to make sure that we kind of have the shapes being more like that, so they are kind of following the ball. And this is how we do the lips based on this side. And this is the area where you have this, again, this kind of a inverted donut, where you have this kind of kind of shape and perspective going in, and the planes going out. So based on all that, we can have the lips. So as you can see here, for example, I'm drawing this side much more wider than this side, which is kind of turning this towards this side, just to indicate that we're looking at the lips from the three-quarter view. Let me make them a little bit more thin. And here the angle will be much more downwards, since we are looking again from this side. And then we have this. Here is the lips from this side. When we're looking downwards now, then we have this ball again. I'll bring it a little bit more down, which is downwards. We have the mouth ball. Then we kind of thinking about how the ball is coming out of the lips. And then how we can think is, we can think that the lips are kind of wrapping around a cylinder like this, right? So if I show you my notes here, so this is a cylinder, it's upwards, but it's almost the same in the opposite way. So we can have lips wrapping around like that, right? Like the lips are wrapping around like that. So the upper part will be a little bit bigger, since we are looking at the lips like that, and overlap the lower part. So it's gonna be something like this. And if we wanna draw it like that, like this. So this is the side where we're looking from up towards down. Then if we go and now take a look at the other angles of the lips, then again we're drawing our ball of the mouth, right? And we are thinking of how the lips are wrapping around, as we saw on the notes again, right? We're having this side here going like that, right? Everything goes upwards, even here on the three-quarter upper view. So we want to effectively create the same, right? We have this, which is the line, and everything goes up. And then this is becoming a little bit more straight in terms of that, and this is how we have the lips. And of course they will continue upwards with the different planes, right? And up to the nose that we had before. For example, like that, there would be the nose, and then we will have the three planes of the nose, right? As we're saying, like this. So this is the lips from this kind of angle, depending on whether someone is a male or a female, it could have differences of being wider or thicker or this kind of stuff. And on this side, of course, the ball is not a ball, kind of, it's more of an oval, right, where we kind of draw it like that. It's a good idea on the profile side to kind of draw the nose and kind of have this this line guide you on how the lips are being positioned. Usually between the nose and chin here, the lips are somewhere on the upper side of the of the needle. Then you have the upper lip coming in, and then it's actually overlapping the lower lip. So you're kind of doing these shapes and this shape here. So if we put all together and we just put the nose here, they're coming out, right? This is the upper one, and this is the lower one, and then you have the chin. So based on that, you have some kind of angle like that. But of course, depending on the face, right, and or what's the organ, what's the area of origin, whether it's Asian or South African, you can have also thicker lips or not have that much overlap. But remember, usually the upper lip is actually overlapping the lower lip. That's important for making it look, let's say, realistic on this profile picture. So if we're gonna get all the stuff that we had here and kind of look in terms of references, and I'm opening up what we have done until now. If we go through the lips, then we have exactly the ball of the mouth, which you can see with a different here for him like that. This is the ball of the mouth. Somehow it's starting from this dimple here that we were calling it like a donut, right? And goes to the other side. So if we do the ball of the mouth again here, usually it will go close to this line, right? To this line here. So we have the ball of the mouth goes close to this line, and then his lips kind of have this angle, so we just going like that, like this, and then you can always measure, right, if you're on the right thing. And then what we do is, as we said, we're gonna have, based on the correct middle line here, central line here, right, which indicates the middle, we can have this one and then the lower one. So if you want to catch the angles, you can just start kind of looking at the angles. Let's say this one is like this, okay, it's like that. This one is like this. So I'm usually using 3 lines here, and for this kind of quite a few lines. So I think it's total 5, like this and like that, like this. Then we have this angle and this. And also, again, you can kind of create use the same shapes that we had before, like the heart shape to indicate where's the point here where the upper lip is touching the lower lip, and this one's we try to help you define the lips. And kind of let's delete our lines and make a good sketch, final good sketch. So we have this I think this is a little bit lower. Let me check this. Yeah, this is a little bit lower. So his lips are fuller, and also they are kind of open. So probably this will come a little bit lower. And we have this kind of angle. And then we have this angle. And then this continues kind of like that, right? And this is maybe like this. And then we have and this would be like that. So if we do measurements, this should be okay. This is probably lower, so the whole lip is coming lower. So the shapes are like here. One more time, more curvy lines. And here his mouth is quite open. So how you want to imagine them is, for example, I'll put this line here coming a little bit more in because the whole idea is that his lips are kind of turning like that, right? This is the 3D form of the lips, and that means that I want to make sure I get these planes by indicating them with overlapping lines, right? For example, like this is going in, like this is going in, like this one, it's overlapping the other lip. As we said, the upper lip is overlapping the lower lip, and then you have a little bit of planes here changed, right? So maybe I'll do a line like that, and then put some more emphasis here and some more focus on this area, and a bit less focus on this area. Okay. So if we go and do exactly the same for hair, this hair mouth ball is wider, but shorter than his. So if we do like this, it's wider and shorter than his. So I think this is kind of high. Let's grab it and kind of bring it lower. Yeah, I think like that would be fine. For example. And then we have a kind of a wider lip. Again, the mouth ball is wider. This would be fine. And then we have the same, right? We're going through the middle and kind of creating this. And the lower lip. Like that. So this is the heart. This is one of the shapes. This is the other shape. So let's measure if we are okay. We're kind of okay. And here the same. So we're gonna make a final sketch, and similarly we're gonna indicate more of an overlaps. So when we're talking about female lips, there is no need to do a lot of lines. Again, avoiding drawing stuff will help you create a more of a female indication compared to men, where you're kind of drawing much more. So this are again the different planes. I'm gonna not draw them, but just an indication on what's happening here, right? And that's it on the lips. Let's go now and look at the final one, which is the ears. Alright, let's go now through the ears. We have, similar to this other features, I have some steps noted down here about the ears. So as you can see, the whole idea is we're starting with this shape of oval shape of the ear, and then we are carving into it in different areas. For example, the upper part of the ear and the earlobe, and then the ear hole here in the middle, and then we're just shading it so to indicate more the pushed in planes. So if we are just copying this, following the steps, I'm gonna do the 3/4 view for you, and I'm gonna talk about the other views in a little bit. So what we have is, we have already an indication of the ear. So we have this shape here, right? Then we have this plane coming in and then just turning around. Then we have this one here and then goes into the ear hole. Then we have this Y shape that is helping us. Usually it may be hard for some people, it may not show for other people, depending on the case, but it's usually always there. And then you just indicate some of the holes that they're going inside like that. And effectively this is the ear. It's not something that is too complex if you know the shapes, but it's a good idea to look into different views on how it looks, for example, in this view. So if we go in the front end view, right, this shape is changing like that, where it's just the plane of this shape. Like if you imagine this as a disc that goes like this, then this is turned around like, and we're seeing only the front plane of the disc, and a little bit maybe this plane. Then that means that we only have this shape here like that, and then a little bit of indication of the shapes. So if we're looking at it like this, then we will have something like that. Similar here is a little bit like the front view, but more looking down. We're just having this shape here, and we have a little bit of indication of the Y, of the Y, and then we have this shape looking like this, and then maybe a little bit of the hole here, and that's it. So we're just thinking about how this kind of forms are turning like that. So we have this kind of turning like this shape, and then all the forms are belonging into here. And if I change the angles, then again something similar is happening. Like we have again this shape. This is now more bigger towards this side because we're looking from downwards instead of this side when we're looking straight into the ears. And then we have this shape. You can also use this line to help you how you can have this shape here. And then we have this one, and then we have more indication of the hole and a little bit this Y, right, this one. And you can maybe put it like this. You can have this line more indicating that it goes down. And of course we already saw the profile view, right? This is, we're just following the shapes, Y shape. Then we have in this is one, and this is the second. Okay, so these are the ears. So what all these shapes have is how they can get manipulated into 3D space. I'm going to show you a few things more about the ears that you need to have in mind when you're drawing them, but essentially the steps kind of are the same. First of all, a few names on what you need to be looking at, right? We have the helix as we show, which is this shape here, and this is how we draw it, right? Then we have this kind of notches here, that's why this shape is more like this. Then we have the earlobe. It could be that people have earlobes or they are kind of connected like that without an earlobe, or they have bigger earlobes, depends on the ear. And then also the anti-helix is what it creates this Y shape that we have inside the ear. You don't need to remember the names, just make sure you have in memory that when I draw an ear, right, I need to have these shapes, and to have a Y, I need to have this shape, right, and then kind of do it like that, and bam, you have an ear, pretty much. This is how ears are kind of in shapes are drawing. And I think the other important thing I wanted to show you is the ears also kind of, depending on the place, they may hide the shapes or they may kind of change shape. So if we take a look at this ones here, how this will be translated, right? So this is more, we saw it more in the 3/4 view. This is more translated like this shape is being squashed, and this is more like that, right? Shape is more like that instead of being like a disc. It's more like the disc is moving like this, and that means if I delete this one here, that means this would be like that, and then the Y is almost not shown because it's like inside behind the shape, right? Then we have this small one here, and then we have the earlobe, and then we have the antihelix showing more, and then we go into the hole here, right? So this is more like ear in this kind of shape. Again, we show this I'm not gonna show again, it's more of a profile, but the difference is when we're looking behind, you need to remember that now the ear, when it's in this position, it's not just a flat shape like a disc, but it has some depth into it. So that means you wanna design it more like that, like you're starting with a depth into it, and then you put the disc on top, right? And then you carve into it, kind of. And this is the earlobe, this is the helix that we were talking about. So the shape, and then the helix goes inside, and that's it. So from this side, this is the only thing we are seeing. We are seeing helix, earlobe from behind, and kind of the cone that goes inside the head. Maybe as with here you can see a little bit of the continuation of the helix here, and maybe a little bit this shape that comes, if it comes in front. For some people it's indicative, so for some others like this one it's not indicative like this one, but you may see it. But there's no need to do all these details. If you want to have a believable ear, you just, you know, go like that, and then you're just done with this angle of the ears. So if we want to apply this into these images that we have now, then I'm going to do a new layer, and then it's pretty much easy. 90% of the cases probably the ear will be in a 3/4 view or a front view. Then we have this shape, as we said, by, so for example he doesn't have a very drop down earlobe, but his earlobe is quite big enough. So we have his helix going completely all the way like this, and then he has a smaller here indication, and then the whole of the ear is kind of wider, and then he has a very small Y here, right? And then we say it like this, and that's it. This is his ear. And similarly to here, it's more of a shape like that. It has a smaller earlobe here on the downside, but much more indication of the holes and the shapes of the antihelix. So we're gonna do kind of a bigger Y, and we're gonna exaggerate this side, and this is here ear, and this is the knots here, more exaggerated knots based on the anatomy that we saw. Let's just make this also just for fun. Yeah, exactly. That was the features of the head. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, guys. If you wanna grab the references file, that's gonna be the link in the description. As we said earlier, you just download the file, it's completely free, no cost at all. If you like this video, please like, and if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the channel, because more videos are coming into the future. And as always, see you at the next one.